I decided to sell an old dresser I had inherited from my grandmother. It was a beautiful piece, but it was just taking up space. I posted it on Craigslist and got a response from a buyer named Alex. We arranged to meet at my place so he could check it out. From the beginning, something felt off. Alex's questions were more personal than I expected. He wanted to know about my daily routines, my family, and even what kind of hobbies I had. I answered his questions politely, trying to brush off the odd feeling I was getting. When Alex arrived, he inspected the dresser carefully. As he examined it, he made comments about how well it would fit into my life, which was strange. He spoke as if he knew more about me than a simple furniture buyer should. It made me uncomfortable, but I kept my composure, hoping it was just nerves or a misinterpretation. Things took a more unsettling turn when Alex suddenly asked if he could use my bathroom. I hesitated but reluctantly agreed, feeling a growing sense of unease. While he was in there, I paced around the house, trying to shake off the weirdness of the situation. When Alex left, I noticed that some of my personal belongings were out of place. My heart sank as I opened a drawer in the dresser he had been inspecting. Inside, I found a note written in Alex's handwriting. It read, "I've always wanted to know what makes you tick." I felt a chill run down my spine. The note was followed by a series of disturbing phone calls and messages from an untraceable number. Each message was more unsettling than the last, with references to things Alex couldn't have known without spying on me. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Alex wasn't just interested in buying furniture. He had been gathering personal information about me, and now I was the focus of someone who was dangerously obsessed. I had unwittingly let a stranger into my life, and now I felt trapped in a situation I couldn't easily escape. I reported the note and the calls to the police, but the fear of not knowing where Alex was or what he might do next lingered. It's been a while since then, but the experience left me with a deep sense of vulnerability. I learned the hard way that sometimes, what seems like a simple transaction can turn into something far more sinister. I decided to sell some old furniture last month and posted an ad online. It was a mix of things: a sofa, a couple of chairs, and a coffee table. I didn't think much of it at the time, but soon after, something strange started happening. At first, it was just a gray sedan that drove by my house now and then. I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was a coincidence. But the car kept showing up, always at odd hours. It was parked on the street, often just sitting there, barely noticeable, but always unsettling. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was probably just someone passing through. Then one night, I heard faint scratching noises outside my bedroom window. I was alone in the house, and the sounds made my skin crawl. I peeked out through the curtain and saw the gray sedan parked across the street. My heart started racing. The scratching grew louder, and I noticed shadows moving against the curtains. Panic set in. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I grabbed my phone and called the police. As I spoke to the dispatcher, I saw the car's headlights turn off. Someone was getting out of the car and moving toward my house. I scrambled to hide in the closet, my heart pounding so loudly I was afraid it might give me away. I stayed there, barely breathing, until I heard the sirens. When the police arrived, the gray sedan was gone. They checked around and found evidence that someone had tried to tamper with my door lock. The police assured me that they would keep an eye out, but I was left shaken. The realization that someone had been watching me, waiting for the right moment, was terrifying. I hadn't thought much of the gray sedan at first, but now I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I felt violated and unsafe in my own home. Every little sound made me jump, and the shadows outside my window seemed to hold a new, sinister meaning. A few weeks ago, I decided to sell an old bicycle I had lying around. I posted an ad on Craigslist and quickly got a response from a buyer. She wanted to meet at a park nearby, which seemed like a reasonable place for a transaction. We agreed to meet in the late afternoon. When I arrived at the park, I saw her standing by a bench. She looked disheveled and nervous, her eyes darting around as if she was expecting something or someone. I approached with the bike, trying to stay friendly. But as soon as we started talking, her behavior grew increasingly odd. She asked me questions about my life, my daily routines, and even about my family. It felt invasive, but I tried to stay polite. The park, usually a calm and pleasant place, seemed different that day. Shadows grew longer, and the setting sun cast eerie patterns on the ground. The woman began making strange comments, saying things like, "Do you feel like the eyes are watching us?" I laughed it off, but her words made my skin crawl. Suddenly, she grabbed the bicycle and bolted. I was stunned for a moment, then snapped into action and chased after her. As I ran, I heard faint whispers and saw fleeting shadows darting between the trees. The park, which had felt so familiar and safe before, now seemed like a labyrinth of dark corners and hidden threats. I finally caught up to her near the edge of the park. Out of breath, I demanded to know what was going on. She turned to face me, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. "I've been following you," she said, her voice trembling. "I know you're connected to something sinister. I had to see for myself." Her words were chilling. I was confused and frightened, realizing that this was more than just a simple transaction gone wrong. She truly believed I was involved in something dark, and her obsession had turned our meeting into a nightmarish chase. I knew I had to get away. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on her as I made my way back to my car. Once I was safely inside and driving away, my heart was still pounding. The whole experience left me shaken. The park, which had always been a place of relaxation, was now a reminder of how quickly things can spiral into fear and uncertainty. Last week, I listed an old bicycle for sale on Craigslist. It was a classic model I'd inherited from my grandfather, and I hoped to find it a good new home. Soon after posting the ad, I received a text from an unknown number. The message claimed to be from a Craigslist associate who had verified my address. The text was unsettling, especially since the sender insisted on visiting me that night. I was wary but tried to ignore it. The texts kept coming, becoming more urgent and aggressive. The sender demanded that I let them in, and each message grew increasingly threatening. As night fell, my anxiety mounted. I heard a knock at the door, but when I looked through the peephole, there was no one there. My phone buzzed with another message. "Look out the window." My heart raced as I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I peeked outside and saw a figure standing under the street lamp, staring directly at me. The figure's face was obscured by the shadows, but I could feel the malice radiating from them. I was paralyzed with fear, but managed to call the police. As I watched the figure move closer to my window, I realized this wasn't just an unwelcome visitor. It was someone who had been tracking me. The thought of being watched and followed left me feeling vulnerable and terrified. The police arrived, but the figure had vanished. They took my report and searched the area, but they didn't find anything. I couldn't shake the feeling of being stalked, and the unsettling experience left me on edge. I had learned the hard way that sometimes, the things we think are just innocent transactions can quickly turn into something far more sinister.